We finally made it. This is the last one. So this is our last demo app that's coming together. This one's going to be about UI split view controllers. So we're going to do part of the app is going to demo using a split view controller. Then we're also going to talk a lot about table views. So you can see if you look at the quarter, I would have liked to have done more with table views, to be honest. When we kind of came through these these other navigation and tab bar controllers, and it'd have been nice to have like a simple table example first, but we just kind of ran out of time. Hopefully you got some really good table practice in the book, and you're ready to do a slightly more advanced UI table views app. So we're going to do a lot of stuff with table views. The app that we're going to be making is called DualBrowser. The idea of DualBrowser is that you have two browsers. So you have a web view that's on the top that you're going to control as a browser. Then you're also going to have a web view on the bottom. You're going to control it. This is going to be a split view controller. So you can see we've kind of got like bookmarks over on the left, and then our two web views over on the right. And then when you rotate, you'll only see the web views, and then the bookmarks will become a bar button item. It's a pretty large app, right? It's actually like the first one that we've done that might be considered useful, which is kind of neat. But to make a real app, it takes a lot of work. So it's going to be a pretty long process, but hopefully you can follow along. We are going to cheat a lot. We're going to copy and paste from the slides just to kind of keep things moving. But hopefully you'll understand what the code does, and you'll have a little reference for you. Something like this might be useful if you wanted to see two things at the same time. So let's say you wanted to see your email, and then you also wanted to be able to like copy things from the email down to like, say, I don't know, a Maps application or something like that. And so having two browsers might be handy at times. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's create a new project that's a window-based application for the iPad. We could have started with a split view based template, but we're going to start from scratch, and we're going to show you all the things that go into making a split view controller. So I'm going to say new project, window based for the iPad, and then I'm going to call it DualBrowser. As always, I've done it once before, so I'm going to call mine DualBrowser Video, but you can just call yours DualBrowser. Whenever we make a window-based application, we don't get that much done for us. We get an app delegate, a main window zip file, but that's really about it. Let's go ahead and start by preparing our app delegate to have a pointer to a split view controller. So we're going to go ahead and have a pointer to a split view controller. So UISplitViewController. I'm just going to call it SplitViewController. So this is kind of the same as we've done every time we've started an app. There's been one root view controller. I guess I could have called it root view controller, but I just called it split view controller. And the way we typically choose to do it is we create the instance in the zip file, and we just have a connection to it here. Go ahead and do the synthesize while we remember to. And then the most important point is to take that root view controller and add it as a subview to the window. Just like we've done every other time, we're going to add the view to the window because the view is the visible part. Split view controllers have a dot view property, just like all the other UI view controllers we've used, so that should work out just fine. And then go ahead and be a good memory management citizen, and you can release it. So now let's go back to the slides, and let's talk about what we're going to put into the split view controller. So what we're going to put into the split view controller is two view controllers. That's how it works. It actually has two view controllers. On the right hand side, we're going to put in a DualUIWebViewController. So we're going to make that file in a zib. And then on the left hand side, we're going to make a bookmarks table view controller. And we're going to make that, and note we don't need a zib for that guy. And then when you rotate this, what's going to happen is only the DualUIWebViewController is going to be visible, and the bookmarks TableViewController will be in a bar button item that you can click on and then see a popover. And that's how split view controllers are supposed to work. So let's go ahead and create these other files. So let's go ahead and create a bookmarks TableViewController. So I'm just going to right click and I'm going to create a new file. This one I want it to be targeted for iPad, that's fine. And I want it to be a UI TableViewController subclass. It's kind of neat that they went ahead and gave you this as an option. If you're going to be a TableViewController subclass, there's a special template that they can let you use, which is nice. But we don't need a zip file. And I'm going to call it the bookmarks TableViewController. Just a quick glance at what it does. You can see it's a subclass of a UI TableViewController. Something that's a subclass means that it's already the delegate to the table view and also the data source to the table view. Also, it goes ahead and creates a view where the view is a table view, so it does all that for you. It also puts a bunch of stubs in for you about the data source methods, and it gives you some stub here for taking care of the appearance. And then also for some things about like editing, which we will use in this app later. Some things about moving, which we'll use in this app later as well. Some things about if they select the row, and we're gonna go through and we're gonna use all that stuff. Let's go ahead and create our other file first, though. So our other file is going to be called DualUIWebViewController. And so if we create it. This time we don't want a table view, but we do want a zib. So we change which checkmarks we got. And I'm going to call it DualUIWebViewController. So it's a view controller, and specifically it's going to be controlling web views, 2 of them. Great. So now we've made those files. And we've already gone ahead and we've created our SplitViewController IB outlet. We've added it to the window. The next thing we need to do is we need to actually create our SplitViewController instance in the main window zip file. So just like every other time we've created the root view controller inside the main window zib, we're going to do that here as well. So you can see that whenever you work with iPhone, the first option is a split view controller. On the iPad, it's a split view controller. On the iPhone, it's a view controller. When you drag over a split view controller, you can see it open this window behind me. It does actually cheat. You can see that when you drag over a split view controller, it makes not only the split view controller, but it actually makes 6 objects total. And it makes these because it knows that you need them, right? So it's got the 2 sides, left and right. The left side, what the left side actually is, it's actually a navigation controller, which is interesting. So it didn't just make a single view controller in there, it put a navigation controller in. And whenever you put a navigation controller in, it makes a navigation bar, which is what's visible here. And then it also puts in a view controller to be the root view controller of the navigation controller. And what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to change this to not be a generic table view controller, but to be our specific bookmarks table view controller. So I just hit Command 4 there to change that. And then it's also got a navigation item, which is what will show up in the navigation bar. And then the other side, we want it to be a DualUIWebViewController. Last thing we need to do before we close this is we need to make our connection. So I'm going to control drag from the app delegate to the split view controller and make that connection. So now, whenever we launch the app, it'll know that we've created this instance, and it'll add this split view controller's view to the window. A couple other things we have to do before we can get this running is let's fill in a couple of things into the bookmarks table view controller. There's some things you have to fill in just to run it. You have to fill in how many sections there are. Let's just do 1. How many rows there are. Let's just put in 10 for now. And then this step isn't required, but it'll make it a lot more interesting. Let's go ahead and put some text into the UI table view cell. The text we're going to put in is very similar to what we did with the picker. We're just going to drop in a little row equals %d, and we're just going to print out what the index path row is. Again, this is where it would have been nice if we'd had time to do another example with table views. Hopefully you went through the book and you're very familiar with an index path and that it's got a row. The book does a great job. So those were the basic things we wanted to do to the bookmarks table view controller. Let's do a couple things to the zip file in the DualUIWebViewController. This is just doing a little bit just so that it pops up. So the first thing I want to do is at the top the first thing I want to do is I want to tell it that it's a detail of a split view controller. So I say that this is actually going to be a detail view of a split view controller. That'll change its size slightly when it's in landscape mode. Just a good thing to do. The top of a split view controller should always be one of two things. Either it should be a navigation bar or it should be a toolbar. So it should be one of those two. In this app, we're going to use a toolbar. So we're going to put a toolbar at the top. Going to be a bunch of things that eventually go into the toolbar. One of them is going to be a back button, so I'm just going to change the word item to the word back. And then just so we've got another thing that's visible, let's also go ahead and add a label. I'll just say Detail View Controller. Another quick thing is anytime you add a toolbar to the top, which is totally legal in iPad, you can see it automatically maintains its distance to the bottom. That's no good. So you want to remove the connection to the bottom and say now it's tied to the top. So that's a good thing to do. Cool. So that's enough. We didn't do a lot, but that's enough to where you can see if you've got your connections made. So the first time that you can actually see something, I like to run it. And just know that everything's going okay. Our first chance to actually see our split view controller. So right now it defaulted to launching in portrait. In portrait mode you can just see the detail view controller. This is actually good. Hold down the command button and hit left, and you can rotate to see landscape. So you can see what you get for free with a UISplitViewController. What you get for free is you put something in for the master, you put something in for the detail, and on rotates, it automatically changes the size of the detail, and then you can see that on landscape it shows you the master. The one thing that you'll notice that you don't get for free is when you rotate, you should have like a button up here that you can click that would make a popover, right? You don't get that for free. They do a lot for you, but you don't get that for free. We will certainly do that in our app. Cool, so we're ready to start moving forward. What we're going to start with in this app is we're going to start with the detail view controller. We want to set up those 2 web views, and so we're going to start with playing in the detail view controller. Make sure my slides are caught up here. So this step worked great. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to start setting this up. So let's open up the zip file and let's start doing some layout work. So what I'd like to do to make my nav bar or toolbar a little more colorful is you can change different styles of toolbars. You can use black opaque, black translucent. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select black opaque, and then I'm going to pick a tint to go with it. I chose a green tint. You can pick whatever you like. Mine's going to be green. And let's start adding things to this toolbar. We're going to add 2 text fields. we're going to add a text field for like the search area, and then we're going to add another text field to do Google searches. We'd like for the URL text field to be kind of centered. So what we're going to do is we're going to add some flexible spaces. And we'd also like to make these things a little bigger as appropriate. Go ahead and make it take up a fair amount of the field. Not quite all, because eventually there's going to be another button in here called bookmarks. And we want to make sure that it looks good whenever it's added as well. So that looks like a reasonably sized starting point. You can adjust to your heart's content, right? So it could probably be a little bigger. But that looks pretty good to me. The next thing we're going to need to do is we're going to need a UI web view. So we're going to learn a lot about UI web views. They're not going to be the focus of this video lecture, but you'll definitely learn a lot about them. I'm going to drag it over to the other side and then drag it down a little bit. Hit Command 3 and we can go in and adjust it. For this web view, I want it to stretch, to always fill left to right. I want it to be tied a certain distance from the top, which is good. And I want it to expand vertically if this thing grows. And for the height, 450 is what I'm going to use. Exactly half I think would have been 458, but I actually think it looks a little better if the bottom one is just a touch bigger. Cool, so that should be pretty good. Next thing I want to do is I want to copy this toolbar down to here. I'm going to hold down the Option button, and then I'm going to just drag it down. Cool. And so you can see that whenever you hold the Option button, it makes a copy of it, which is a really handy little system. One thing we do want to change here is no longer do we want it to be tied a certain distance from the top. We want it to now float and stay in the middle as this thing moves around. And then on the bottom, we'll stick another web view in, and we want it to fill just left or right, and then just fill the remaining space. And on him, we want him to stretch horizontally to always fill, stretch vertically, but stay tied to the bottom. The struts here don't work perfectly because if you think about what's happening, these two guys are resizing, but our toolbars are going to always be exactly 44 tall. So the resizing won't work out perfectly, but I'm going to say it's going to work out good enough for this app. One thing you might want to do though is it'd be nice if this toolbar, so eventually this toolbar and this bottom are going to overlap. It'll look a little better if the toolbar is on top of the web view. It'll look a little better. One way you can do that is you can just drag things around. So now the toolbar, the bottom toolbar, will always be on the very top if the two overlap. Cool, so that's our basic look that we're going to need for this thing. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to add a bunch of tags. What we're going to do is we're going to tag the buttons, the text fields, both text fields, and then we're also going to tag the web view. We're also going to set a couple basic properties. You can see that there's a little placeholder here, a little placeholder there. Should have done that before I copied it. And we're also going to set a property on the web view, and then we're going to add these tags. So it's going to be 1000, 1001, 1002, 1003 is the web view, and then 2000, 2001, 2002, and 2003 are going to be the tags. So let's go make some of these modifications. So first thing that you'll notice is that whenever I click on the back button, it shows up bar button item. It's actually a bar button item. When you click on the text field, you can see that it says bar button item. That's because the UI text field is inside a bar button item. So you actually need to click a second time to change the text field attributes. In here, I'll just say a couple basic things. I'll say enter a URL as a placeholder. We could set a bunch of stuff about the keyboard, but I'm going to do that in code instead. But we will go ahead and set the tag right here. So this is going to be tag 1001. Forgot to set my back button items tag. He's going to be 1000. The reason we're setting the tags, and there'll be a slide about this shortly, is because anytime you want to have the same IB action do something, you like to tag them so you know which is which. Both back buttons are going to call the same IB actions. The other time tags are nice is if you're going to use a delegate, and we're going to be using a delegate for all the text views and the web views. So you can see here the bar button item has no tag, but if I click a second time, the text field has the tag 1001. Let's go set this one. Again, you have to kind of double click on it to see the text field. In the placeholder, I'll just type the word Google or Google search. There are things we could set about the keyboard here too, but I'll just set the tag and move on with life. So that's 1002. The web view, the one thing we want to change is we would like to scale pages to fit it. I think that looks much better. So now web pages are going to scale to fit this size. And its tag is going to be 1003. Same thing on the bottom. Our bar button is going to be 2000. Our text field, which I kind of have to click twice to get to, we're going to say enter a URL. And his tag is going to be 2001. And for Mr. Google over here, we'll say Google. Apple would probably rather you said search, but I'm going to just say Google. And his tag is 2002. And then the bottom web view, scale pages to fit, and his tag is 2003. So there's still more connections to come, but we're going to have to go make some IB outlets and some IB actions and things like that. But we've got the tags set up and we've got the basic properties set up. So let's go see what what other things we're going to add. First off, it's nice to have pound defines for all your tags in code. That way you can refer to all your tags by name instead of just number. So I'm just going to import names for all my tags so I can refer to them easily later. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to start adding some IB outlets. So you can see we're going to be adding a total of 6 IB outlets, 1 IB action, and then we're also going to become a delegate to the text fields and the web views. Because this is a fair amount of typing, I'm going to start the cheating process. Actually, I started on the last slide. And I'm going to be copying and pasting a lot from the slides. I recommend you follow along and go ahead and copy and paste as well, right? So you actually build things, but you don't type. Cool. So inside the DualUIWebViewController, we're going to add these things. We're going to become a delegate to text fields and to web views. We're going to make connections to our 2 toolbars, our 2 web views, and our 2 URL text fields. These are the ones that I found it's handy to have references to. And then we've also got our outlets and our actions. While we're at it, let's go ahead and synthesize things. So we need to synthesize all 6 of these guys. And then we should dealloc them as well. Down in dealloc. And then if you want to be a really good memory management citizen, if this view ever gets unloaded, you should let them go as well. I'll go ahead and do it. Because if the view gets unloaded, you want to free up as much memory as possible. And if the view ever needs to get reloaded, then you'll reload the zib and it'll work out fine. So I'll be a top tier memory management citizen. Great, so let's go ahead and make some of these connections. We got 6 outlets, 2 actions that are going to have to get connected, and then a whole host of delegates. Once you've saved it, you should be able to start dragging to these things. So control drag from files owner to the various things. First, I'm going to grab this top toolbar. So that's toolbar top. Bottom toolbar. That's toolbar bottom. This URL text field top. URL text field bottom. The top web view and the bottom web view. There are my outlets. Actions I need to drag the other way, so I'm going to drag from this back button to the pressed back button. And then from here I'm going to control drag to the pressed back button. So those are things we do all the time. Now we're going to do a couple more things. We want to become the delegate to this text field. So I'm going to click on the text field. I'm going to go to its attributes. I'm going to say delegate. Delegate is files owner. The delegate of this one, files owner. Delegate of that text field. And this is actually pretty common to connect your actions, your outlets, and then a whole bunch of delegates. So those were the 4 text fields. And then the top web view, his delegate is going to be files owner. And then the bottom one is going to be files owner as well. So a lot of things we connected there. So we should have, to make sure that you did it all right, click on Files Owner and hit Command 2. And you should see all 6 IB actions connected. There should be 2 actions. Sorry, those 6 outlets, 2 actions, and then there are 6 delegates as well. Cool. Once you've got that all set up, you can close down the zip file. If we did everything right, we should be done with the zip file. So let's start implementing some more stuff. You should be able to build it. It'll give you a warning. It might yell at you that you don't have an implementation for this IB action, but you should be able to build it, and it should compile without error. I mean, we can run it now, but it doesn't really look tremendously different because our web views are currently blank. But you can see that our toolbars are coming along nicely. Let's load some stuff up into this guy to make it a lot more exciting. So what we're going to do, we're going to cheat and we're going to copy paste some code. So just to kind of be careful, let's talk about what we're copy pasting. So what I'm doing here is I'm setting a couple properties on the URL text field top. You can see I'm going to start off saying that it starts at google.com. I'm going to set up a couple things about the keyboard. So it's going to use Go on the keyboard instead of saying return or done. The keyboard type is for URLs. They've got a special type for URLs, which will be nice. It'll have like a .com button and things like that. Capitalization correction we're just going to turn off, just because you type some crazy things into URLs. You don't want it to be auto-correcting you. And then this one I think is neat. You can have a clear button, which is just kind of like an X, so you can clear it off. And I think that would be a good thing to have on a URL text field. I got this code, by the way, from Apple sample code called UI Categories. Catalog, I think is the one that I grabbed it from. And so I stole some of this code from there. That stuff is pretty simple. Then this last part will need a little bit of explanation. The way that you load something into a web view is an NSURL request. So you say, hey web view, load request, and you pass it in an NSURL request. So what we're doing here is we're using a convenience method. So you know how you've done like string with format, Well, this is a class method on NSURL request called request with URL. You can see that they're going to take care of the memory management. It's going to be an auto release. So you're going to make an NSURL request with an NSURL. And then the game kind of continues. To make an NSURL, we're going to use a class method on it, a class convenience method, and we're going to say URL with string. So we're going to pass in a string. It's going to use that to make an NSURL. It's going to use that NSURL to make an NSURL request, and then it's going to load that NSURL request. And we're going to do the same thing for the top and bottom. So I'm just going to take this code here and I'm going to paste it into the ViewDidLoad area. So the ViewDidLoad area here, I'm going to paste in this additional code. And so now we should have a much more exciting app because it will actually load up 2 web browsers, which is pretty neat. And I mean, at this point you could use this web browser to do searches. So you could look up whatever you wanted, right? You'll find that the bottom one is a little annoying because the keyboard covers it up. Little things like that. There's always more extras that you could add, right? But it should, whoa, it should be able to be used as a web browser. What did I click on? You can also click on the clear button and it'll clear it off, and you could type in a URL. You could type in URLs to your heart's content, but it doesn't do anything yet. So it doesn't really do anything yet. Cool, so we were able to launch it, and we're able to see that initial starting state. One thing you'll notice is that I'm actually using 4.2 here, and so it actually remembered its state because it's using background threads multitasking, which is kind of neat. Guess I'm not allowed to show that still for another week, but you know what, you'll get over it. Cool. So initial display check. We're displaying stuff on the screen. What I would really like to do though is I would like for those text boxes to do something, right? So I'd like for those text boxes to actually go somewhere. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to implement the UI text field delegate. We claim that we implemented it, so I suppose we should. So let's make a little area for the UI text field delegate. The way I typically do delegates is I Control click on them and I see what functions there are in that protocol, and then I just paste them in. You can see that these are all optional, which is why it didn't yell at us, and you can choose ones that you would like to implement. The ones that we're going to implement, we really don't care about these should begin and should end editing. I'm not worried about those. Should change characters in range, no thank you. Should clear, no, I just want it to clear. The only one that we need to actually do anything with is when somebody presses the return key. So when somebody presses the return key, what we'd like to do is if the text field is the URL field, then go to that URL, and we'll add a little error checking for HTTP. And then if it's a Google text field, then what we'd like to do is we'd like to add, you can actually do a Google search just by adding www.google.com / I think it's search is how it works, question mark Q equals, and then like what you want to search for. And then once we've added the appropriate things, depending on whether it's the URL field or the Google text field, if it's top, load request for the top, and then else load the request for the bottom. So I thought I would type out the strategy because we're going to copy paste it, and I'd like for you to kind of understand what's going on. But I also don't want to make you type every word. So knowledge without typing, that's our goal. So we've got this view so far, catching up my slides here. It's looking pretty good. Oh, I forgot, we're going to implement the back button real quick. So let's go ahead and copy that over. The back button is actually extremely easy to implement. And that's because Apple makes web views to where they can just click on go back. So we're just going to say if it was the top, then on the top one, see if it can go back. And if it can go back, make it go back. Really, you could use this can go back to enable or disable the button. That's something that you could add, you know, to enable or disable the button. We're just going to check it before we call it, just to kind of make sure. I don't think there's any harm if you call go back when it can't go back. So press go back is actually a really simple function. And then the next one up is the text field delegate. So let's go ahead and copy this code into our little stubbed out area. Oh, the other thing I forgot to stub out is removing the keyboard. So when somebody presses enter, you want to remove the keyboard. And then if the text field is in the top, or sorry, if the text field is a URL, there's some stuff that we want to do with URLs. What I'm doing here is I'm saying, is it the URL text field in the top or the URL text field in the bottom? If it started with the words HTTP, we're going to assume that they did everything right, so we won't do any additions to them at all. We'll just say the URL is just whatever was in the text field. If they just type the word like www.google.com, we'll add HTTP by default, and we'll add the :/ because that's what will make our NSURL request happy. If it was not in the URL fields, so that's what you should do if it's in the URL fields. If it wasn't one of those, then you know it's a Google search. And what we're doing if it's a Google search is first off we're appending on google.com search $Q equals, and then we're going to append on to that what was in the text field, so the text field's text. But if you want to search for multiple words, you have to replace the spaces with a plus symbol, and that's just because URLs can't have spaces in them, so you just replace it with a plus symbol, and that will do the searches for us. So that's good. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy my comment up in there. Cool. I'll go ahead and copy this comment into the appropriate area as well. And then the last thing we do is once we've got that URL as a string, if it was one of the two that was for the top, either the URL for the top or the Google text for the top, then load the request into the top. And if it wasn't the top, it must be the bottom. And load the request into the bottom. So you can see we've got the URL as a string. So we're converting that string into an NSURL. And then we're converting that NSURL into an NSURL request. Then we're taking that request and we're loading it into the web view. So fairly simple function with a fairly powerful result. So now if you run it, you should be able to type into this text box. So if I clear it off and I were to type in Rose-Hulman .edu and hit enter, you can see it would pop up Rose-Hulman. If I was to do a search into the Google box, you can see that I set up the keyboard such that it just barely missed, which I thought was kind of clever. You can do a search for, I don't know, do a search for myself, Dave Fisher. You can see what what famous Dave Fishers there are in the world. The goal is always to make you know, you the thing that pops up. if you do like an image search for yourself. Oops, having trouble with the overlap issue there. See how long it takes to get a picture of me in here. I don't make the front page yet. Someday. I'm just kidding. Cool, but the point is that you can see that you can type things in to the box, and that's all well and good. Go to my company website, mobackdesign.com. I'm sure people spend a lot of time there. One thing that doesn't happen yet is if you click on links, it will go to that page, but you can see that the website up here never changes, right? So you can go to different pages if you like, but the website doesn't ever change. So that's something we would like to fix. So let's go and make some more changes. So the changes that we would like to make is we would like to implement our WebView delegate. So our WebView delegate, let's make a little area for our WebView delegate. Do the same thing that I always do with delegates. I'm going to command double click on the word. It'll take me to the header file. You can see it took me into UIWebView.h. There are 4 optional methods that we're going to choose to implement, all 4 of them actually. So the first one is, I'll just make, we're going to eventually copy paste them, but do the learning portion first before we do the copy paste portion. Let's talk about what each of these does. So should start, so it asks a question, should you start loading this request? We'll always say yes. But what we would like to do in here is we would like to update the URL text field with the string of the request. So we get the request in here, and we're going to kind of do the reverse. We're going to get the string from the request, and then we're going to load it into the appropriate text field. And so we're going to have to look at the WebView tag to load the correct URL text field. So that's what we're going to do in this area. And then it did start to load. We're going to start the network activity indicator. It's kind of neat. You actually have access to that little spinning thing whenever it's doing network activity. You have access to just play with that, which I think is kind of cool. And then when it finishes, we're going to stop the network activity indicator. Also, if there was some type of error, we'll stop there as well. Another thing that we're going to do is instead of just updating the text field whenever we start loading, there are a lot of little subparts on pages, and if you leave it with just that, it will display the last little subpart it added. So what we're going to do down at the bottom on did finish is we're going to go and update the URL text field here as well, and then that way it'll clean that up. So it'll show the last, like the main page at the end when it's finished. Cool. So let's go ahead and let's copy paste in the implementations of these methods. So the first one is the should start to load. So I'm going to go ahead and paste it in. So you can see that we look at the WebView tag. So if it's the WebView top, then we're going to load the top one in. And then we're going to update the URL in reverse. So we're going to take the request, which was an NSURL request. We're going to get the URL from it. And then from the URL, we're going to get the absolute string. And we're going to load that into the top. Or the bottom, depending on the tag. So that one was pretty straightforward. When it starts loading, we're going to start the network activity indicator. The way you do this is you say UI application shared application dot network activity indicator visible, you say yes. The activity indicator is set up such that whenever it's visible, it'll already be spinning. So it'll, when you set it to visible, it will start the animation. And then in did finish loading, we're going to say stop the activity indicator. And then here, I went ahead and I cheated a little bit. And so instead of looking at the tag, what I do is I just grab the top web view and I grab his request, and then I grab the URL from the request and then the string from the URL, and I just load it in at the top. I didn't bother check which one was sent here. I just grabbed them both. Either option is fine. This option was kind of the lazier option, to be honest. I could have also done the web view. I could have done it just like this, right? Looked at the tag and then just loaded in the appropriate one. Doesn't matter what you do. I guess here you get to see both options. And then if there's an error, we will stop the activity indicator. So if you run it at this point, you should see some additional functionality. Let's go ahead and go to Rose-Hulman's website. Rose-Hulman, this is the school where we're teaching. You can see that it actually started the activity indicator. Another thing that happens is if you click on links now, you can see that it actually shows the link at the top. And if you watch, so watch when I click something, I'll click on special events. You can see that it actually showed when it was loading, and it showed those activities. So we've got a lot of new functionality. We've got the ability to show where we're at, showing our location. We've got the activity indicator up here. Personally, it might look better if you had a second activity indicator over here, just because this one's pretty small, and we've kind of got a lot of distracting stuff. And we should also have a back button, so we can click back, and our back button should now work. Likewise, we should be able to do searches with the search bar. So if I do a search for Rose-Hulman, I should be able to click on it. You can see that this is always updating, and the activity indicator is working down here too. And I can click back. So at this point, we've got a borderline functional web browser. And if you go into Portrait, you get more screen real estate, which is kind of nice. So you get that extra little bit of real estate. And so it's pretty cool. You can type something in, it'll add the HTTP for you. You can click on different things, and it'll show you what's going on. One thing I don't like is it does kind of show you all the little things that are loading, but that's all right. So some stuff about apps that I've done. Cool. We could probably also add other nice features. We could add like a home button. Home buttons are kind of standard. Could do that. But we've got basic functionality at this point. The thing we don't have though is we haven't implemented our bookmarks yet. It's going to take a while to do that. But what I want to do first is I at least want, when I'm in portrait mode, I want to be able to click on the bookmarked buttons, and I want to be able to see that pop over. So that's what we're going to do next. We're going to implement the bar button item when we're in portrait mode. So that's going to be our next task. To implement that bar button item, we're going to need to become the delegate to the SplitViewController. So there is a thing called the UISplitViewControllerDelegate, and that's going to be us. Let's go ahead and make a section for that. So I'm going to go ahead and make a #pragma UISplitViewControllerDelegate. To see what's in this thing, I'm going to hold down Command and double click on it. You can see that there are 3 optional methods. They did a nice job of giving little descriptions of what happens in these methods. Take out the word optional. I just grabbed it just so you can see that they are all optional, which means we can implement or not implement any as we like. Just to make it a little bit more readable, I'm going to break it up into lines here. So there are 3 of them. The first one is will hide view controller. So it's hiding the view controller on the left. This is when it just went portrait. And you can see it actually hands you some stuff for free. It gives you a bar button item, which is kind of neat. It just gives you a bar button item. This bar button item is already set up such that when you click it, it'll launch a popover. And it gives you a reference to the popover as well. This is the popover that'll get expanded when you click on this bar button item. And so the things that we're going to do in here, we're going to set a title for the bar button item. They don't give you a title by default, so you have to give it a title. We're going to set the size for the popover. Remember, popovers will take up the full height by default, and we don't really want that. It looks kind of silly, that tall, which is no good. And then the big thing that we want to do is we want to add the bar button item to the toolbar. And that's a little sneaky. What a toolbar has is a toolbar has items, and it's an array, but it's immutable. So we're actually going to create a mutable copy of the toolbar items. Insert the bar button item into the mutable version. And then we're going to write the mutable array back to the toolbar items. So that's what we're going to be doing in this area. The other callback is whenever we need to go back to landscape. So this is the area that just went landscape. And the things that we're going to do in here is we're going to remove the bar button item. And it's kind of the reverse of what we did before. So we're going to create a mutable copy. And then instead of insert, we're going to remove, put it in all caps, remove the bar button item from the mutable array. And then we're going to write back that mutable version to the icons. The other callback in here is called when it presents the popover. We actually don't need it, so we're just not going to implement that one. We will implement these two. Just to kind of start with, let's make our connection and make sure it's working. We'll do the same thing that we always do. We'll just print out the name of the function. So this is kind of like a first test. We'll do an nslog and we'll just print out the name of the function. So we've claimed that we implement the delegate, and that's all well and good. We say, hey, we implement this delegate, but we're not set as the delegate anywhere. So the question is, where do I set this at? How do I become the delegate of the SplitViewController? I don't have access to the SplitViewController here. The place where you can set it is you can set it over in the main Windows zip file. So let's go and open up the main Windows zip file. So the SplitViewController has a delegate, and I want the SplitViewController's delegate to be the DualUIWebViewController. And so presto changeo, he is now my delegate. So whenever the SplitViewController wants to ask questions of somebody, it would ask via the delegate, or whenever it wants to tell the delegate about events, which is the case here, tell this guy about events of the SplitViewController. So let's go ahead and run it, and let's see if our nslog messages are coming through. So you can see already I got one. I got a, let's go knock it down to 50%. I got a will hide view controller. That's because in portrait it hides it. If I rotate it by holding down Command and hitting left, you can see it says will show view controller. If I rotate back, it says will hide, will show, will hide, will show, will hide. Seems to be working. Now let's actually implement those things I said that we were going to implement. And we're going to cheat, as per usual, and copy paste the actual code to do this task. So here's where we set ourselves saying we are the delegate, and then here's where we perform the will hide view controller actions. So I said that we were going to set the title, so we set it to the word bookmarks. We were going to set the size for the popover. The size that I picked was 320 by 480. That's an iPhone screen. I like to make my popovers that big because that's a size that users are already comfortable with. And then what I did here is just in the slides I wanted to tell you if this was a navigation bar, here's what the code would look like. You would just set the left bar button item. It's actually much easier, but that's not the case here. I just put that in there to tell you. So what we're going to do here is we're going to create a mutable copy of the toolbar items. When you say mutable copy, it has a retain count of 1. You're responsible for that retain count of 1. Then we're going to insert the bar button item that we got passed into index 0. That puts it at the far left. Then we're going to write it back. We're going to say animated no. You could say animated yes if you wanted. It didn't really matter. But I said no just because it'll just kind of appear when you do the rotation. And then to take care of our memory management, once we've written it back, we go ahead and release it. So that'll make it show up in the toolbar. To take it out of the toolbar, we'll go ahead and copy this code in here. Just like last time, I say if it was a navigation bar, here's what you'd do. You'd set the left bar button item to nil. That's not the case here, but I wanted the code for your future reference in the slides. And what we do here is just the reverse. We make a mutable copy, we remove it, we write it back, and we deal with our memory management cleanup. So this, if this works, this will be the last step for today. So you can see that now we've got a little bookmarks button, and you can see that we left enough space that it still looks pretty good. And if you click on the bookmarks button, it already magically does all the work for you. It goes ahead and puts into the popover the master view controller. So you can see it went away whenever I rotated back, and then when I rotate the landscape, it's here. You can click on these rows, but they don't do anything yet, right? Also, if it rotates, it'll take care of making it disappear for you, which is great. And like any popover, if you want it to go away, you can just click somewhere outside of it, and it'll go away. One thing it doesn't do, though, is if you click inside the toolbar, it doesn't go away there. That was just kind of the behavior you got by default. I'm not sure if that's desired or not, but that's just kind of how it works, that this toolbar won't make it go away. Cool, so we're going to pause here for today because we've actually done a ton of work, and it's time to take a break. But we've got the detail view controller pretty much all set. And this was the part of the example that did the split view part. So now our split view is working. So we've kind of broken it into two parts. A lot about split view controllers, which that's now done. When we come back next time, we'll start talking about UI table views, and we'll start implementing those bookmarks and all the little features that go along with that. Cool, so we'll see you next time when we'll start talking about the table views for the bookmarks. See you then.